Greetings, my friends. Welcome to the next episode of the Mint Mob Podcast. Jason here, joined by my buddy Alex across the pond in Germany. We're going to jump into what's happening in the NFT world and talk a little bit about collecting psychology as well. But before we do, let's check in with Alex. How's it going, buddy?
Everything is going really well. Still enjoying the ongoing World Cup, of course. We had a really beautiful drop on the last Friday. Two beautiful pieces came to life. Shout outs to Maria, a really cool US piece that kind of represented the host country. The United States were, of course, not the only country that is hosting the World Cup, but definitely has most of the games in their stadiums. And then we had a Spain piece, and it's maybe even like one of two Spain pieces we'll have this year, because Spain still has a really good chance to qualify for the finals. And if they do so, we will get a second piece here. So yeah, enjoying the World Cup. Great week, great mint. Love the energy with the collectors. Can't wait to see the next two pieces Maria is creating. Haven't seen them yet. And yeah, of course, how is it possible? Like it's not sure who is going to play the finals yet. But tomorrow we'll witness Spain against France, and I hope all of you guys are crossing fingers that Spain is going to win. Of course, hoping for Maria now. And yeah, what about you? Did you follow the games at the weekend from the World Cup?
Yeah, I was watching the Norway game for sure. I wanted to watch the Vikings play, and went to the gym, did a little rowing.
Had a really
cool
celebration.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And then they got robbed. I think the officiating, honestly, my opinion of the officiating in the World Cup games has been pretty poor. I don't think there's been a lot of consistency, and this is one of those things that Americans really hate. Like the rules need to be enforced consistently, and they're just not. And it creates a lot of weird results. So
wait. I need to chime in here, because I feel like when we speak about fouls, for example, right? Like look at basketball. Basketball is a great example, because when a basketball player fouls, he's also like going to the referee and be like, "Oh, it's not a foul," blah blah blah. So the same thing is happening there, right?
No, it's not the same thing. Like in basketball.
No?
Yeah, I mean, like if you look at the professional game in basketball and the professional game in soccer or football, whatever you want to call it, if you watch the rules, like I grew up playing soccer, and you're perfectly allowed to like play the ball, and you're perfectly allowed to shoulder charge people. Like you can both be playing the ball, and like if you and I were both running for the same ball, like I can lean into you and I can shoulder charge you the whole way, right? But I'm not allowed to grab your jersey, grab you by the shoulders, try to pull you to the ground. And literally on every other play where there was a contested like 50-50 ball, you saw players like literally pulling on each other, almost tackling each other and tackling each other in some situations. Refs didn't call any fouls. And this is ridiculous. Like it makes no sense whatsoever. Literally shirt tails being pulled to the point where players are being pulled to the ground. Like this is ridiculous. Like, if you contrast that to the basketball game, that stuff's going to get called, and it's going to get called fairly consistently, at least much more consistently than what I've seen in the World Cup game. And then in England-Norway, you had this English goal come off of a ball that hit one of the cables in the stadium. Well, that's supposed to be a dead ball, but what do? They just played it anyway, and then they counted the English goal, So technically that game should have gone to 1-1, if that goal had been removed. And again, like this is just basic consistency stuff. Like the ball clearly hit a cable, which means it's a dead ball and it should be dropped and play should be resumed from that spot. But like this has happened multiple times in this World Cup, and the officiating has been absolutely horrendous. So, I mean, this is the type of stuff that, as an American, when you watch it, you just get frustrated. It's like, come on, that was like, it's on replay. Everybody in the stadium saw it. The whole team's pointing to it. Like, come on, guys, like this isn't hard stuff. So yeah, it's been frustrating to watch it at times.
Wait, to watch replay, are you referring to like from the Norway game?
I'm talking about the goal that England scored.
Oh,
That second goal that they took the ball off of a cable. The ball,
yeah, like the spider cam, right? Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah, that's a dead ball. That's a dead ball. It should have been a drop ball right there, and the referee should have restarted play, but they didn't. So like half the team is expecting there to be like a restart of the game, and meanwhile England is running down the field. So, you have to have consistency. If you have rules that say if the ball hits something out of play that's a dead ball, then you have to enforce those rules. I mean, that's just clear, plain as day.
Yeah, but I think in that particular case, the argument was that the balls, like they have a little sensor in it, and it didn't register any contact. But I mean, that was a very unusual situation. I feel like the worst part is handball decisions. When a penalty is involved, and they always seem to spark endless debate. Was the arm supporting the body? Was it an unnatural position? Did the player's body posture make the contact punishable or not? And that's like, you can have like basically one contact and you have 10 referees and everyone has a different opinion, and that's where it doesn't make sense in the end, right? And
Yeah.
I feel like penalties decide a game, right? And that's where you definitely need to get some consistency in.
They can, certainly. I mean, and that's the whole thing. Like the consistency piece is really lacking. It's really, really lacking, and it's really obvious when you watch the games closely, whether it's pushing and shoving, like literally having forwards pulled to the ground. There were a couple plays where goalies would come out, toward the 6 meter box or the six yard box and like punch the ball. And then, they would jump up and fall on the opposing team, and the opposing team would get called for like a free kick or something. It's like, why are you doing that? Like the goalie is placing himself in danger. Obviously, if it were the other way around, if the player were attempting to, push and shove with the goalie, it would be like a vulnerable situation. It'd be a clear penalty. But like there's been 2 or 3 penalty kicks and goal kicks or decisions decided where there's pushing and shoving, and like a goalie would fall down. There was literally what game was it, where the goalie just fell down? Like there's literally no one near him. He just falls down, and then he gets a call. It's like, dude, is anyone paying attention? And like, I get it. If you're a referee on the field, you can't see through everybody, but if you have replay and you can play it back, and the goalie clearly just falls down, like no one even breathed on him, it's time to start taking a look at that stuff. That's the stuff that's frustrating, especially when it results in like a momentum shift or a goal for the other team. And then, of course, the clock, the timekeeping in soccer is just ridiculous. There should be a clock that gets stopped so that everyone knows how much time is in the game. There's just the dumbest stuff, man. Like this is like stuff that just drives you crazy when you're sitting here trying to follow the game.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, extra time is definitely a thing that should be. They should think about that. I mean, they add extra time, right? Like maybe 7 minutes, and they don't even end the game after 7 minutes, right?
Mm-hmm.
If another foul happens, or if another break happens for some reason, like they add that time on top as well, and then it's always like highly subjective whether the referee ends a game or lets one more attack run, and in the end all that can decide a game. And I don't even know if the video referee is positive for the game or not, because in the end I feel like even looking at those videos, you still have different opinions, and that was actually something that they tried to resolve with the video assistant referee, and that didn't work out. And I'm like, do you have a solution for all this? What would you do? I mean, isn't like a foul always somewhat like subjective?
I don't think so. I mean, if I'm running down the field and you're pulling on my jersey and like pulling me to the ground, I think that's a foul. Like these.
All right, absolutely right. But if I pull it and then leave it and then you still fall to the ground, is it a foul or not? Like, to what degree do you need to pull it?
Well, okay.
Like, it's actually not that easy.
Here's the thing, though. It's really simple, right? Like if you, let's say I'm the attacker and you're the defender, right? And I'm attacking your goal, right? And we're both running after a 50-50 ball. So we both have a 50-50 chance of getting to the ball. And on the way to the ball, you're pulling on my jersey and like pulling on my arm and slowing me down, right? But I don't fall down, and then we separate. Okay, fine. I don't need the foul because the foul would have gone into my favor anyway, right? I don't need the foul. Just let me play because I already have momentum. But if it's going the other way, then yeah, the foul should be called. Like if you disadvantage the player, then it should be a restart of the game or a free kick, one of the two. It's really not that hard. But it's been really funny to watch like all the opinions, you know, like when the referee makes a call and you've got players, you know, especially some of the Hispanic players, the Italian players, like running up to the referee, like trying to reason with him, talk to him, like he's going to change his mind.
Yeah.
It's all this discussion, right? That just doesn't happen here in sports here. Like when the call gets made, you know, somebody might bitch and moan for 2 seconds and it's over. And then, you know, we're on to the next thing. And the videos can clarify, you know, maybe you can't get all angles or whatever, but like when someone's clearly not touched, video shows that. When a ball is clearly beyond the goal line or the perimeter of the field, you can show that. You can show who had last possession, blah, blah, blah. I mean, there's all kinds of different things that it can clearly show. But I mean, honestly, dude, like watching forwards being pulled to the ground is just completely unacceptable. I mean, that to me, like, is what keeps the scores so boring and low. Like, if you can tackle a forward, if as a fullback I can tackle a forward, then you know the game's always going to be a low scoring game. It's not going to be that much fun. And then at the end of the day, like the referees too, like if there's a foul that's just inside the 18, you know, and then he's like, oh well, the foul's close enough to the edge where I'm going to pull it out. And it's going to be a free kick outside the box rather than a penalty kick. It's like, really? Like, who's making up these rules, man? The foul was in the box. That means penalty kick. You know? I don't know. It's just so stupid. It's so subjective and ridiculous, man. Like, I think the best thing from this is like so many eyeballs are on the World Cup and so many Americans are seeing it. And obviously you've got the video referee again. The video referee can show all of the inconsistencies, and I think FIFA's going to have to address it with something other than like, you know, oh, the sensor we had in the ball didn't show that it was interrupted by the cable. Well, who gives a shit if 70,000 people saw it hit the cable? Who cares what your little ball shows? You know, I mean, come on, man. It's crazy.
Yeah, but I still don't really believe there will be like major changes, but I like the discussion part that you mentioned is probably what annoys me the most as well. And even like if you look at like on one hand, it never changed anything. Discussing never changed the decision. Plus, like these teams do that even after the games, like even when the game is done, or even before the game. You remember when Belgium, they were like when Trump did the whole thing with FIFA and the red card, and they were like, we are officially filing a public complaint with FIFA because, you know, they took the red card back. And you know, what the fuck? Why? Like, shut up and play. And it's like, yeah, it's insane. There is a lot of things that can be improved, but it's still the sport managed to become the most popular sport in the world, man. What can we do?
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely.
All right, but let's jump a little bit into NFTs. And there was one statistic that really caught my attention today. When people think about NFTs, right, they often picture 20-year-olds chasing meme coins and flipping PFPs. But I found some data today for NFT art collectors. It's not much. I think the sample size was like a little over 300 art collectors, but it still, you know, shows us a little direction. And the survey showed that 53% of NFT art collectors are millennials, so roughly between 26 and 41 years old, and 36% were Gen X, so 42 to 58, 59 years old, and only 5% were under 25. And yeah, the other ones are basically 1% over 77. Yeah, but in total, 89% of NFT art collectors fell between the ages 26 and 57. So the question is, does that surprise you?
Not at all. Not even a little bit. I mean, Gen X, my generation, of course, was one of the first generations to like dive into the collectibles market. And, you know, if you were a kid, you know, a little kid growing up in the 80s or whatever, and even into the early 90s, like those are the best years to collect because you had some of the best franchises and comics and toys all come out. And a lot of times the world building and the cohesiveness of the collecting and the experience was all tied together, from like Saturday morning cartoons to like cereal boxes with toys in it that, you know, represented the characters or the stories that you liked, to, you know, cartoons after school at like 4 o'clock or whatever, to toys, to, you know, in the shelves, to comic books at the convenience store, like all of these things, like everywhere you went, if you were into a certain thing, like there was the ability for you to reinforce what you wanted to collect. You know, He-Man was one of the first big cartoons, and you had like the early G.I. Joe figures, the 4-inch G.I. Joe figures. And then you had like the Star Wars stuff, like all this stuff kind of hit at the same time, and they all had television shows or movies backing them up. And then there was tons of other stuff that came off of that, like Transformers, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Oh shit, I'm trying to even think. There was one called Mask, Silverhawks. Oh geez, man, so many different things. Thundercats, like all of these shows, man, like every day. And the animation was getting to the point where it was really fluid and like smooth, as opposed to sort of jumpy, really hard to watch animation visuals from like the decade prior, like the 70s and the 60s and stuff like that. So as a kid, you could sit in the 80s and you could actually watch a fluid story be told in an animated format, and it actually, you know, was easy to watch. It was really easy on the eyes to see. So yeah, I mean, like we were brought up, that whole generation was brought up collecting stuff and really diving into the story and lore and all that kind of thing. And the millennials got a dose of it as well in like the 90s, late 80s, early 90s. And it was probably not quite as cool. It was kind of tapering off at that point to a degree. But yeah, I mean, all of those people are like primed for that. And then of course, when you take a small subset of each generation where, you know, like a big chunk of Gen X was raised on technology as well, whether it was video games and Nintendo and all that kind of stuff, to like the millennials who got really heavy into video games and really helped, you know, bolster that market. So collecting video games, you know, collecting characters and t-shirts and posters from all of your favorite video games, it all just sort of lended itself to that era in time, from like the late 70s to like the mid 90s. Like if you were born anywhere in that era, you were exposed to it in some way, shape, or form. So to me, it's not surprising at all. And in fact, I think it's going to continue to grow, if for no other reason than more people will discover it. But also these two generations right now have a little bit of disposable income, and they're able to buy these types of things and the things that they enjoy and love. So yeah, I expect it to continue to grow for sure, and to centralize around those two demographics. As you know, the market matures, we might get younger people in as well. But we have to, I think the biggest challenge with like the youngest generation is, at least in America, they were brought up not to believe in anything, you know, like not to really have like strong convictions or belief systems around certain things that had to do with their country or a particular story. And they don't really share the same commonality that a lot of the earlier generations shared. Like that sort of American exceptionalism, you know, we're all in this together, you know, we're here to do good things kind of a stuff. They didn't really get that story. They got the exact opposite. So like for them, it's going to be a little bit different because everything is fragmented, and, you know, they were taught a completely different way of thinking and seeing the world. So I think as time goes on and then they learn and they see, you know, how different people across the world have opportunities and have how different people across the world come together around different ideas, that those tribes are going to expand beyond generations and beyond location and become more like specific online communities, right? Like we talk about this a lot. Like, there might be a guy down the street who has nothing in common with me, but he has everything in common with 50 people who live in Iceland, for whatever reason, right? And they're able to actually form a community around whatever their belief systems are online, right? And they might get into a specific idea that tells a story about, like something that they hold in common or something that they believe strongly about. And it has nothing to do with like the way that I see the world. And that faction of people will collect a different thing, right? And the cool thing about NFTs is you can touch all the different ideas. So it doesn't have to be about like 80s cartoons or American exceptionalism. It could be about, like Vikings, for example, to use the Norway example from, the World Cup and then also the TV shows, right? A lot of people gravitate toward that stuff. So, I mean, maybe they collect like stuff that has to do with Viking lore, and there's an NFT project that supports that, right? Same thing with like Gary Vee, right? His community of people spans a bunch of different generations, and he's got an NFT collection that talks about basically different positive traits of humanity, right? So everyone can relate to that. And it's not about 80s television or, 90s collectibles and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. It's about, hey, we're trying to be good people and build businesses online, and this is some of the traits that you need to exhibit type thing, right? And it's more about cards and that sort of thing. So like no matter where you're coming from or who you are, there's the opportunity to build in the space and have like a foothold in the space. It's just going to look different depending on what era you're coming from. And I think that's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, it absolutely is. And I just wanted to touch on something you said in the very beginning when you mentioned that, the kids growing up in this late 70s, 80s, maybe early 90s, have been, familiar with collecting things back then when they, when they started. Like what was the first thing you collected? You mentioned it on a space, I think. Was it like comics, or what was like the first thing?
Probably the first thing I was really like big into was those little G.I. Joe figures, the 4-inch G.I. Joe figures.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. But like, if people grew up learning and evolving into collectors, wouldn't that mean that there is like no next generation of collectors because people grow up differently these days?
Not necessarily, because like think about it, right? Like every generation yields a new generation, right? And we can talk about like I'm using the 80s example because it's fresh in my mind and it's something that I experienced firsthand, and people around me. But the other thing too is it wasn't just an era that was like limited to the US. Like a lot of these collectibles went to different markets, like Mexico, Great Britain, South America. Every once in a while, you'll find a like a crazy rare G.I. Joe figure that came from, I don't know, like pick your favorite country, like I don't know, like Argentina or something, and it's got like Spanish writing on it, and it's just like a really rare thing. Same thing with comics. And actually, one of the oldest comic franchises comes out of the UK, I believe, if I remember correctly, over 1,000 issues. I can't remember the name of the title. So, like, the people who came from that era, this wasn't limited to like just like the U.S. and it wasn't necessarily something that only happened here. It might have looked different, but it was like a global thing. Like even the animations coming out of Japan, for example, during this time period, some of the most popular production studios coming out of Japan, and they actually made some cartoons that made it all the way to America, and they had collectibles that represented them all in Japan. And so all of these people worldwide now are married or in relationships, having kids, right? And they're bringing their kids up in similar fashion, right? And one of the cool things that we've seen here in the US, again, a market I'm familiar with, is the advent of like the 6-inch figure. So we went from 3 3/4 inch, like a 1/8, it's called a 1/18th scale figure, to a 1/12th scale figure, which is a 6-inch figure. And so all of the G.I. Joe figures that I grew up with, like the Marvel characters, who else? The Star Wars characters. They're all being remade in this different format, and parents and kids can now collect together. And you're seeing this a lot, and you're seeing parents like watching TV shows that relate to these characters with their kids. Like we were on Spaces the other week, and Scott, Metalhead, was talking about watching Star Wars with his kids. So they're being raised on similar story. And, obviously Metalhead's a collector, right? So his kids are probably going to grow up to be at least exposed to it. Now, whether they gravitate toward it or not will be up to them, but they'll be exposed to that, right? So every generation teaches the next generation to kind of do what they did. And when nostalgia kicks in, like the kids want to remember, I watched this movie with my dad, or, I was at the store and we picked up this figure together, or this comic together, or we bought this NFT together, right? They're going to grow up on all that kind of stuff. And so it's going to perpetuate itself.
Yeah, but I'm not sure if you can actually compare NFTs and collecting NFTs to like things like action figures or trading cards, because they're obviously real life assets. They're tangible, and like what like when I read the article, when I read the statistic, the first thing that came to my mind when I read that there is like a really low percentage of under 25-year-olds owning NFTs or owning art NFTs, the first thing I thought was like, yeah, of course, because they're broke as fuck, right? So what do you think? Like, this disposable income, what kind of role plays that for NFT collectors? Like, is it necessary to have built, some kind of career before you enter markets like this? And because obviously collecting art is a luxury, right? Like it's not needed for you to survive, and it's of course especially some one-of-one art is not like cheap. So yeah, that's like the first thing that came to my mind when I read that statistics, and I felt like, yeah, of course, because Gen X, millennials, those are people like having built something in the best cases, and being financially stable, while young people are still seeking to build their careers and are financially not as do not really have that disposable income ready yet. So what do you think? How important is that point?
I think when you look at those things, you're absolutely right? Disposable income plays a huge role, right? Like think about it yourself, right? If you can't pay your bills, or you're trying to, build a business and you're setting money aside, or you need to, save up for a wedding or whatever the case may be, like you're not going to be blowing your extra funds on collectibles, no matter what they are. It doesn't matter if it's real world or NFTs. You're just not going to do it, at least if you're disciplined about what you're doing, right? So it really isn't about that per se. It's just about timelines. So I remember, like those little, I mentioned those little G.I. Joe figures. I think they came out in like, I don't know, 82 or 83. I was so young, I don't really remember like when I got my first one. But I just remember wanting to get them all once I had the first one. And then as I got older and I started, like having a job or whatever, and then separating and becoming more independent from my parents, like you get a bicycle, and that's a little bit of freedom, and a skateboard, and that's a little bit of freedom. And then that turns into a car, and that's a little bit more freedom, right? And the whole idea of growing up at that point was to separate from your parents as quickly as possible. Like you want to get out of the house, you want to have your own free time, and your own freedom and your own money. And so everybody wanted to have a car and have a job and, a girlfriend and all the rest of it. And then of course, like collecting stuff fell by the wayside because all my money and time went into, okay, I want to get a car and I need to work and I need to save money and blah, 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 blah. Right. And then when I got past a certain point in my career, it was available to me again and I came back to it. And so right now, the people who are Gen X with kids, they've brought their kids through that same timeline. And so in every generation where there's that lull of collecting versus not buying versus collecting again, there's a generation filling in that lull, of new kids coming in doing the same thing that their parents did in most cases, right? There's actually a shop here a collectible shop here in Anthem where the dad actually opened the shop just because the kid wanted to like have a business in collectibles, and they do all of the card games, you know, like the Pokemon stuff, right? And you'll see more and more of that, right?
Well, first of all, so do you feel like the collector demographic is going to look different in like 5 years from now?
Yeah, of course. Every generation has a subset of collectors, no matter what it is, right? The like my grandfather's generation, which I don't even know what the name of their generation would be, what, the silent generation, whatever, like the World War II generation, whatever they were. Like they collect like antiques, you know, like signs and furniture and stuff like that. And that stuff has gone crazy through the roof. And then my dad's generation was all about cars, you know. Like growing up, they had to have the fastest car, and so they would buy all the car stuff and the hood ornaments and the, you know, all the speed shop type stuff, right? And then my generation was about like all the story and the lore, right? And the cool thing about the internet is all of those worlds are now available to every single person. So if you're an antique collector and you live in Iowa or wherever in the middle of the nation, and you're an antique collector and you live in LA, well, now eBay joins you two together, and there's a market for that, right? So there's monetary incentives for buyers to support collectors of all ages, no matter where you're located in the world. So not only do NFTs provide like this sort of example of digital assets and digital asset ownership and a market to buy, sell, trade, hold, whatever, eBay does the exact same thing for real world assets, right? It's just a different way of seeing the market, and the market itself is never going to change or go away, because the psychology of humans is whatever I like, I want to spend more time with what I like, you know. So maybe you're a guy who collects, you know, I don't know, dirt bikes or whatever. Like there's a guy in Scottsdale I know that collects dirt bikes, and he's got dirt bikes from every era, you know, and he just loves having them. Doesn't ride them, they just sit in a garage, and he loves having them, right? And then there's some guy in California that's willing to pay him tens of thousands of dollars for an antique dirt bike that's been restored that he can't buy anywhere anymore, right? And so there's a market exists for that through just something as simple as Facebook Marketplace or eBay or whatever. So like the world is getting smaller in terms of who we can contact and the people that we can spend time with, and like who we choose to call family and who we choose to call friends. Like all of these different people can now be joined. Like I was mentioning earlier, the guy next door, I might have nothing in common with, but he might have something in common with 50 people in Iceland. That's what I'm talking about. The internet has made the world a small place. And if we want to trade, like even across country borders, even though it might be difficult to get through customs, you can still do it, right?
One more thing that the statistics suggested was that NFT art collectors still appear to be predominantly male, while the artist community itself is much more balanced. Is that something you've experienced as well? Because I think we do actually have a lot of female collectors, right?
I think there's a lot of female collectors for sure. But in terms of like, you know, like art, the people who are quote unquote selling art, not necessarily collections, that definitely trends more toward females, in my opinion. I mean, what have you seen?
Yeah, I mean, you and I, we have been, looking for more male artists in order to, get them into the Artist Incubator gallery and get a little balance in there as well. But it's hard, right? Like there are not too many male artists out there, and I know that you have been looking into traditional markets as well, and you've reached out to some comic book artists. Are those predominantly male, or what's going on there?
Definitely more male real world artists for sure. And this again comes down to like who's making a living and who isn't. In the NFT space, a lot of the artists who are putting out one-of-one art, I think it's pretty clear that they're not like the breadwinner for the family. They're not making money for the family, selling their artwork or what have you. In very rare cases is that happening, right? Again, the market is super small, and there's a very tiny number of people who have been really successful. In fact, the people who are the most successful people in digital art actually came from the real world art world, and were selling real world pieces for $5, $10, $15,000, and then have decided to digitize like prints or receipts of buying and selling their art more than anything. And to be honest with you, when a livelihood is at stake, just based on like the way men and women are programmed, you're going to see more men in that field, right? There's much more competition in the like real world art sphere for illustrators, for like writers of like story and comic. It's going to be much more male dominated than female dominated, again, because it's a income producing activity as opposed to a hobby, or as opposed to something that they want to do on the side. And that's not to say that there aren't women there. There are. But in terms of like, can I support my family doing this? If when a man is involved, he has to know that he can provide for himself and his family for sure. That there's no lifeline coming back. And, some people might look at that and be like, well, that's just stereotypical, gender roles. And I'm like, yeah, exactly. Because the truth is, like, human psychology is what human psychology is. And, men and women are programmed the way that they're programmed to a certain extent. And so you might have differences on the fringes, but, in the middle of the bell curve, that's how people operate. A man wants to know that his work is productive and that he can actually support himself and others with it. And that generation of people is older as well. Like the comic book artists from that era are older as well. So if they're still doing art in their, 50s, 60s, whatever, 70s, even more, and in younger ones too, then you can pretty much bet that they're getting paid enough to live on it. And that's like a crucial indicator as to like professionalism. And what I'm seeing too in the real world art space versus the digital space is like the real world art space is going to bring you much higher quality art because the competition is so much greater there. And it's also going to be less expensive because there's so much more competition there. So I think that the digital art world is going to be really in for a surprise once like traditional artists start coming into the space to a greater degree, because the quality of the artwork is going to go absolutely through the roof, and the costs and the charges are going to come down for what you can actually get for a piece of art. So if you're buying, like an artist or a specific type of art in the space, get ready to have that, sort of not upended, but get ready to have that sort of become less impressive as like real world artists from all walks of life, male and female, illustrator, graphic designer, whatever, come into the space and start bringing like finer and finer touches to it. Because, again, being as new as we are in the space, we really haven't scratched the surface of what's possible from a quality perspective. And this is why, when we're bringing people in, we're trying to find the best quality art that we can possibly find. And then, of course, identify it as such and then explain why it is. And I think that ultimately the art buyer is getting more and more savvy. The art collector is getting more and more savvy. I had a conversation online with someone the other day about, why we do collector galleries, because he was like, oh, no one should buy NFTs, especially with all these platforms going down. I'm like, yeah, you're right. Like you should, if you're buying one of one art, it should be yours. Like you should own it. And we have to be honest about that, like who owns it, it really comes down to whose collection it belongs to, right? And so all of these little nuanced things that no one really thought about, because the market started out as a bunch of degens who wanted to just sell stuff and trade imaginary internet money, is evolving into something much more sophisticated. And it starts with fine art galleries and fine art PFPs and quality work, and pushing for like what we've seen Daria create for us with the sirens, and a lot of the artists create for us in the AI, and soon to be, whomever we hire for the mail collection. Like all of that stuff is, the biggest challenge is finding people who are committed and actually love the work and really want to see beautiful things created. And so, from that perspective, I think ultimately what people are going to really come to know is that we truly, like in terms of what's possible, we truly are early in both like the visuals, like what's possible art-wise, and what's possible technically. And I think the artists who've been ignored because of hype and horseshit or whatever, their visuals will rise to the top. I mean, honestly, there's a guy on Ethereum, and I don't collect much on Ethereum, but there's a guy on ETH, and he goes by Henlo, and his PFP collection is one of the most beautiful NFT collections on chain by far. And it's really simple characters drawn in a comic style, but the way that he does it is with such flair and such care that you can't help but notice the beauty of it. And everything is really, really well done and consistent. And then on top of that, he has like a fine art collection that he's done with a bunch of like Asian inspired images. And I don't know, maybe his heritage is Asian. I have no idea. I've never seen him or heard him speak about why he does what he does. But these pieces are absolutely gorgeous, like absolutely beautiful. So like stuff like that, the Anashis, the Darias, you know, the Marias who are doing their character work, like all of these people have the opportunity to really stand out doing their character work over time. Nastia with Mermeow, the stuff that we're doing with the Sirens and with the GoodFellas, like really, really pushing the edge of the quality envelope is, I think, where the next like wave of interest is going to come from.
I'd really want to have a traditional artist on Spaces once and, you know, ask him about his perception of the NFT markets. And, you know, like to some degree, it's not understandable for me because like they can literally see that there is money to be made inside the NFT market space place. And like they see that the art that is being sold often is mediocre. So why not jump in there, take that opportunity, and you know, and provide art? I'd love to speak to one of those artists and get to know why they think like that. Because is it just the term NFT that, you know, kind of yeah, frightens them, or they feel like it's always a scam or whatever? Still, like, I don't know, like maybe we can get one of those guys on Spaces at some point. That definitely would be great. I know that you and I we keep talking about the fact that if we were artists or if we had a collection, we would never launch on anything but Solana.
Right.
And today, when I read the statistics, I was looking at Glasscoin, which is a website that basically breaks down all the data that is related to NFTs and how much volume is on different chains, and yeah, how many buyer wallets you have, how many seller wallets you have. And when I checked that and I looked at, you know, all the different chains on there, and I looked to the bottom, like the actual bottom, like the last one with almost zero volume, I saw a chain that we are familiar with, and that's Stargaze. It's interesting, right? You and I, we had a collection on Stargaze. We launched the Sirens on there. We've always predicted that Stargaze is most likely going to zero, just like most of the other chains.
Mm-hmm.
And it's interesting because when I saw that, I just went to the Stargaze website and checked the collections. And I remember when we launched the Sirens and I jumped into different Stargaze Discord servers, they have almost been a little arrogant, right? Like they have been like, oh, we are the bad kids, we are the mad scientists, we are, I don't know, the sloth community, the Celestials. And now all those NFTs trade for like a couple bucks. It's crazy. Like back then they were so expensive, and they felt like, hey, we are going to, you know, sustain, and your launch is too expensive and blah blah blah. And now we have Stargaze died, and this is like the perfect, like this is basically a look into the future for most of the chains, right? And it's like crazy that most of them will probably not see that coming and not accept that. But there are like tons of chains already that have such a declining volume, and the number of sellers and buyers almost, you know, um, like shows zero. And I'm happy that the two big ones, ETH and Solana, managed to be stable. And like Polygon is just living because of the Poly Markets website that is on Polygon, and I think they got one big website that does like trading cards, but other than that, there is barely any art being traded. And same for Base, like Base barely has any volume. So yeah, it's like all that is basically proof that what we been telling people yeah is actually happening. And
You cut out there. Did you have something that you wanted to continue with?
yeah, oh, my mic was like muted, but yeah, it's happening, man. It's like the prediction is becoming truth.
For sure, man. I mean, this isn't hard stuff to see, honestly. I mean, if you've been through any
Yeah.
market cycles, whether it's real estate or this, I mean, there's really no difference. Like, when something gets to the point where you have literally hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of options for the same thing, the natural tendency for humans is to find the one that works best for them and to, sort of separate themselves from the ones that don't. And we talked about this before, like selling off all these second tier tokens. Like I used to hold Polygon and Polkadot and, all these other like ETH L2s. And, at the end of the day, they're just not, there's just nothing there. I mean, there's literally nothing there. And when you look at volumes, over the last 24 hours, you had Bitcoin that did like $63 billion worth of volume just in the last 24 hours. ETH did 42 billion. Solana did almost $7 billion worth of transactions in the last 24 hours. So, I mean, these chains are not going anywhere. Like you can, the top three there, you can count on, you can take them to the bank. They are, they've pretty much shaken out the way that they're going to shake out. Bitcoin will be the leader for value. ETH has a huge head start in like the NFT world and the programming world. And they built a whole community of programmers and, like artists around that. And a lot of the early art houses adopted ETH. And so you've seen ETH, sort of maintain its ability to stay in the number 2 slot, basically by default, because they really haven't innovated. In fact, they've gone backwards and hurt a lot of people. Because if you remember right, the ETH market was tremendously supported by a group of miners before they switched from proof of work to proof of stake. And then when they switched from proof of work to proof of stake, they lost all those miners and developed a bad reputation in the mining community. And so miners had to switch to other tokens. And then, of course, that gave Solana room to step up and be like fast. And that's what business wants, right? And that's why Solana continues to grow. Business wants fast and inexpensive. So as much work as ETH has done to drop proof of work, which made their transactions super expensive, to go to proof of stake, they're still, 10, 20, 30 times more expensive than a Solana transaction easily on even a busy day with Solana. So Solana's opportunity is to continue to develop its developer community and artwork community around all of its greatest benefits, its greatest benefits, if I could say that in proper English. And that is speed and reliability. And as long as they can continue to do that, they'll continue to make inroads into the space, and they'll continue to supplant ETH. I mean, like the next ETH update is planned for, I think, like the next 12 months. I forget what it is, but the whole purpose of the update is to speed up ETH. That's it. So now you have a situation where ETH is trying to do what Solana has already done, right? And so with younger people coming into the marketplace and they want fast, less expensive, and they want reliability, they're not going to start with what's slower. They're going to start with what's faster. So the dinosaurs who are still on ETH, if they don't start looking at Solana, a lot of those businesses that they wanted to get business from will actually switch over to Solana. And so as long as that's the case, as long as I can do more business there, and I can work faster and cheaper, that's my main focus. Now, again, ETH is not going anywhere. It has first mover advantage. Unless they do something really, really, really crazy, it will always be number 2 to Solana, and Solana coming in at number 3. And that should be the case. Like if you ever see Solana volumes surpassed ETH volumes, you'll know there's a really big problem with ETH, like a huge problem with ETH. If you have 10-year head start, which is, well, a 6-year head start, I'll say, because Solana came out in 2020. So if you have a 6-year head start in the vast majority of the market and you lose market share or you get flipped by another token, you have really messed up. You have really messed up. So I think the thing that Solana is doing really well right now is they've got developer communities growing in every single country worldwide. They've got Solana events happening in every single country worldwide. They're focused on bringing in the financial assets and the businesses, whereas I think ETH has struggled a little bit to define its identity, and they've lost a little bit to Solana. But I mean, honestly, if they're able to shift things around and continue to hold on to what they have, they'll be perfectly fine for years and years and years to come. But in terms of who wins, like the top tier, the chains are pretty clear. It's going to be Bitcoin, ETH, Solana, maybe one or two others. But in terms of volumes, like just looking at the last 24 hours, no one's really even close.
Yeah, and you almost daily get like breaking news of big partnerships. And I think just today I read that, oh, it's right here. Japanese financial giant SBI partners with Solana Foundation to build on-chain financial market in Japan.
Mm-hmm.
And those are the things you don't read about Ethereum, right? Like it's back in the days you did, but I mean, every institution has realized that Solana is the way to go. And in the end, this is probably going to be, the death of most of the chains who claim that they're on the same level. So, yeah, and the thing is, we do not need any other chain, right? Like this is what you just said. Like Solana does so many things better already, and ETH is trying to catch up. And we do not need another blockchain that does the same thing. And I know that there have been like 1,000 coins trying to build faster blockchains with lower transaction fees, but Solana will always be on top of the game. And as I said, it's no need for 10 more blockchains. So yeah, really happy with the development of Solana and with everything happening around it. And of course, hoping that NFTs on Solana will catch up as well. And yeah, let's just take a minute to conclude what's happening this week and this month in the GoodFellas ecosystem. We've mentioned it in the beginning. We got 2 more drops coming up from the World Cup series created by Maria. We will have the finalists by, let me check. Tomorrow is a game. Do you know when the second semifinal is? I think it's on Thursday, right?
I think it's Tuesday and Wednesday, I believe.
Or Tuesday and Wednesday.
Yeah,
I'm always getting confused with the times because sometimes it's very early in the morning for me. But so we should know the finalists by Wednesday. And then we got the drop on Friday, live on Spaces. And we are going to have Maria with us again to speak about the art and have a little delay between the mints so we can take some time for each piece and focus on it, because on top of the 2 World Cup pieces, we will also get the second NFT NYC piece, which is the male version, and we will have the diptychs. What's the plural here? Diptychs? I don't know. Of the NFT NYC pieces ready. So if you get both pieces of the same number, make sure to tell me in a ticket or in a DM, and I'll get those pieces to you as well. And then we will have another Artist Incubator drop on July 31 by none other than Daniel, the creator of the Alien Body Buds. We are still trying to get him on Spaces. I reached out to him just like a couple minutes ago, like half an hour ago, and waiting for his I just got a response, so let me see if I can just read it live here to get some little alpha to the people. We'll have to find a time. He said that he'd love to join a space, but he has kids, obviously. If we do not make it, then we will maybe do a written interview as well. That would be great. And yeah, can't really wait. I'm really excited for this drop. I'm seeing these aliens all over my timeline. I know that we have many collectors inside our community who collect those, and it's really cool to finally get an alien into the Artist Incubator gallery. And yeah, that being said, I know you have been in touch with Daniel as well, right?
Yeah, I have been. I actually invited him in and turned that conversation over to you. And obviously,
Yeah.
looking forward to his work. And I do want to just say one quick thing about the whole Solana ETH thing that you mentioned. You said something to the effect of like Solana will always be there. And I think that I just want to point out the fact that nothing will always be there that isn't constantly invested in and built. And this is the challenge. And I want to point this out because I get this from a lot of ETH devs when I speak to people.
Mm-hmm.
There's a certain amount of snobbery that comes with like having a .eth domain. I guess I have a .eth domain too, but like using it online. And it's like well, we're the king of the we're never going to be knocked off. And this is the wrong attitude. And this is one of the challenges that you have with like first mover advantage is forgetting that you can always be knocked off. And I think Solana kind of being the scrappy upstart, started by a guy basically in his garage who spent many months and years trying to find investors to get his thing off the ground, learned that and understands what that's like. So I think that just in terms of, buying anything, guys, always look at adoption and what's growing. Don't ever assume it's always going to be there for you because it's not. And this is true of NFT projects, from us all the way through. Like if you ever feel like what you're investing in or what you're buying into isn't growing, then you're probably right. And you need to take a hard look at that. So just be really conscious of that fact. And that's all I'll say about that. Nothing is guaranteed. Everybody has to work. And we got a long way to go. And all I'm saying about Solana is that they have the right attitude, basically. And when it comes to GoodFellas, Alex and I are trying to do our best to maintain that same sort of scrappy attitude and sort of, in the face of like, really weird odds, do different things and continue to push and grow. This week, like Alex had mentioned, we've got the 2 World Cup finalist pieces, which is, again, something we've never done before. Maria's going to work like kind of crazy hours to make this happen for us. So we owe her a huge debt of gratitude because we won't know who the finalists are until like Tuesday night and Wednesday night, like US time, which will be like, the middle of the night for her. So she's going to work some crazy hours to make sure that we get those pieces together. We'll have the second NYC piece, and then, of course, the diptych that goes with that. And, of course, I haven't forgotten that, I still owe you guys for your October passes. So all of that stuff is on the go. And then, of course, while doing this, trying to negotiate with artists and find new people for you guys. Just know that, we're always working behind the scenes to get this stuff to happen because it doesn't just happen, guys. And I really want to, throw some serious gratitude for you guys who follow along and understand that and for acknowledging that, and throw a huge amount of gratitude to Alex as well for sticking in, because obviously partnerships are hard and everything that we're doing here is hard. And Alex, you've been here throughout all of this stuff and stuck with it. And this is something that's rare in the space, and I think we have something special. So anyway, that's kind of my soapbox speech on the tokens and the attitude piece. And hopefully you guys get that, where we're coming from is that place of like really wanting to put in the work and do quality over time. And that's really what we're going to continue to put in the market space.
Yes, and I think those are the perfect words to wrap up today's episode. We hope to see you guys on Friday with us during Spaces, during the Mint. Let's celebrate the World Cup one final time before the finals on Sunday. And yeah, remember to bookmark the link. I'll drop it tomorrow inside the Discord. And we'll see you guys on Friday. Have a great week, everyone. Bye-bye.
Take care, guys, and fingers crossed for good officiating on the last games. We'll see you guys then.